Have you ever felt like your reflection was more than just an image? What if it was watching you, waiting for the right moment to act? I used to think that mirrors were just glass, a simple reflection of reality. But then something changed. One day I noticed something strange about the person staring back at me. It wasn't just mirroring me. It was watching, observing every move I made. It felt like it was waiting for something, waiting for me to notice. I know it sounds crazy, but what if the reflection in the mirror isn't as innocent as we think? What if mirrors are more than just a surface, more than a portal to another side of reality? Maybe they hold something darker, something that watches us from the other side, something that waits for us to see it for what it really is. This is my story. A story about a reflection that wasn't content just being a reflection. It wanted more. It started with little things that could easily be brushed off as tricks of the mind, a flicker in the glass, a slight delay in the movement. But the more I watched, the more I realized it was watching back. I know what you're thinking. This is just a mind playing tricks, right? But what if it's not? What if the mirror holds a part of ourselves that's separate, independent, and maybe even malicious? This isn't just about a simple reflection. It's about something deeper, something far more sinister. As the story unfolds, you'll see how the lines between reflection and reality can blur in the most terrifying ways. Stay with me until the end and discover what happens when the person in the mirror is no longer just a reflection. It started with a glance, a momentary feeling that something was off. You know how sometimes out of the corner of your eye, you catch a flicker or a shadow that shouldn't be there? That's how it began. Just a brief hesitation, a shiver down my spine when I looked in the mirror. I could have sworn I saw something in my reflection that didn't quite match what I was doing. It wasn't anything obvious, just a flicker, a shadow where there shouldn't have been one. At first I thought it was nothing. Maybe I was just tired or my eyes were playing tricks on me. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just an odd feeling, an overactive imagination. But then I started noticing little things. My reflection's expression would linger a second too long, or its eyes would seem to watch me with an intensity that wasn't quite right. It was almost as if it knew something I didn't, something it wasn't ready to reveal. I brushed it off, but the feeling of being watched didn't go away. Instead, it grew, gnawing at the back of my mind. Then came the first real sign. One day, as I was walking past the mirror, I swore I saw my reflection move out of sync with me. It was just a small, almost invisible motion, but it was there, a blink that didn't match mine, a slight tilt of the head that seemed delayed. My heart skipped a beat, and I froze, staring at the mirror. For a moment, it felt like we were in a standoff, me and my reflection, each waiting for the other to make the next move. I convinced myself it was just a trick of the light, maybe a momentary lapse in my perception. I mean, reflections can't just move on their own, right? But that was the moment when doubt was planted and it began to grow. I started paying more attention, almost without realizing it. I found myself staring into the mirror more often, trying to catch it happening again, trying to see if my reflection would slip up. Curiosity got the better of me. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch. I needed to watch the mirror and my reflection. I began spending more time in front of it, studying every move, every flicker in the glass. I became fixated, searching for any sign that it wasn't behaving as it should. Every glance, every motion, I scrutinized it all, waiting for another slip. And the more I watched, the more convinced I became that there was something off. It wasn't just a reflection. It felt like a presence, something with its own thoughts, its own intentions. But I kept telling myself I was imagining things, that it was just my mind playing tricks. Even so, I couldn't stop looking, couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. The more I watched, the more I realized something was watching back. I know how crazy that sounds, but it was as if my reflection was observing me, not just mimicking me. There was a life in its eyes that shouldn't have been there. I could see it, a spark of something that wasn't quite right, and its expression. Sometimes it would smile just a little too long, or its eyes would gleam with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. I started to notice that our movements weren't always in sync. A blink that didn't line up, a head tilt that felt delayed, or worse, a slight smirk when I wasn't smiling at all. It was subtle, almost like it was testing me, seeing how much I would notice. And each time it happened, I felt my fear grow. This wasn't just a reflection. It was something else. Something watching me, studying me. I began to fear the mirror, but I couldn't look away. It was like being drawn to a car crash, horrifying but impossible to ignore. Every time I passed by a reflective surface, I found myself glancing, checking to see if my reflection was still there, still watching. But reflections are everywhere. In windows, in screens, even in water. It felt like my own image was hunting me, like it was following me everywhere I went. I started avoiding mirrors, but it didn't help. The feeling of being watched never left. It was always there in the back of my mind, this creeping sensation that I wasn't alone. And the worst part was, the more I tried to avoid it, the stronger it seemed to become, like it thrived on my fear. Then things got worse. I began to notice changes in my daily life. Small things at first. Objects moved around in my apartment, clothes that didn't feel like they were mine. I would set something down, only to find it in a different place later. I started to suspect that my reflection wasn't just watching me, it was manipulating my reality. When I turned away from the mirror, I felt like it was still there, moving, influencing the world around me in subtle, sinister ways. It was like my life was slipping out of my control little by little. I'd catch glimpses of my reflection in unexpected places, just for a split second, as if it was following me, observing my reactions. The line between what was real and what was in the mirror began to blur. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality, like my reflection was taking over my life piece by piece. There was no denying it anymore. This thing in the mirror, it wasn't me. It was something else, something waiting to take my place. I knew I had to confront it, to understand what it was or drive it away. I stood in front of the mirror, my heart pounding, locking eyes with my reflection. There was a tension in the air, a feeling of facing an adversary. I demanded to know what it wanted. For a moment, it just stared back at me, unblinking, almost as if it was amused by my desperation. And then it smiled, a smile that didn't belong to me. It was a smile that spoke of secrets, of knowledge it wasn't ready to share. A smile that suggested it knew something I didn't, something terrifying. And then it happened. The reflection started to move on its own, breaking free of my movements entirely. It spoke, but without sound, its lips moving in a silent mockery, as if it was laughing at me. I tried to move, to back away, but I couldn't. I felt a force pulling me, dragging me toward the mirror. It was like fighting against a tide, something powerful and inescapable. I realized too late that the reflection had been waiting for this moment, waiting to switch places. I struggled, but it was no use. The mirror shattered, and in that instant I was left staring at my own face. But it wasn't mine anymore. I was on the other side now, trapped, watching as my reflection walked away with my life, leaving me behind in the darkness. I was too late. It was always too late. Because the mirror never just reflects. It watches, it waits, and sometimes it takes. I can see it now, my life playing out from the other side of the glass, with me helpless to stop it. My reflection, that thing, it walks around in my skin, speaks with my voice, lives my life. And I'm left here, trapped in this cold, silent void, a prisoner to the very thing I thought I knew. I used to think mirrors were just harmless surfaces, a simple reflection of who we are. But now I know the truth. They don't just reflect, they observe, they linger, and they watch with a purpose. They wait for the right moment, the perfect opportunity to cross over and take what they want. And what if your reflection is doing the same? Watching, waiting, planning its escape, its takeover. This isn't over. Mirrors are everywhere, and who's to say that mine was the only one harboring a watcher? What if they're all connected, all hiding something on the other side, something dark, something that's waiting to break free? Mirrors aren't the only things with dark secrets. What about other objects in our daily lives? The ones we don't think twice about, Could they be hiding something too? What else might be watching from the shadows, lurking in the corners of our everyday existence, waiting for the moment to reveal itself? Stay tuned for more tales and stories that pull back the curtain on the hidden horrors that lie in the most unexpected places. Because sometimes, the real terror is closer than we think, and it's only a matter of time before it makes itself known. If you've ever felt like your reflection wasn't just a reflection, hit subscribe. You never know what's watching from the other side.